Hi, welcome back to Real Auto Reports. I'm Jonathan McGrew. This is Real Auto Ranch, and today we have the real video, the real review on this 2014 Scion TC. It's an all-new design for the Scion TC. Yet again, we saw one several years ago, and this one has a lot of details we should tell you about. So let's hop in the driver's seat, get going, and see what this little sports coupe has to offer. All right, so welcome back. Here we are, as I said, in the 2014 Scion TC. And this is a pretty cool car, I think, because it's the entry-level sport coupe from Scion. It is meant to be affordable, it's meant to be fun, it's meant to have good looks, aggressive looks, with a banging sound system. At least it has the option of really putting out some great tunes, and you can get things like this 6.1-inch screen with the Bespoke app, and it's a touch screen, so what else could you want, right? Well, here's the thing about the Scion TC. It is like the sport coupe from yesteryear. Think about all the options out on the market today for a genuine entry-level sport coupe. And I just have trouble putting my finger on one. I mean, I guess, you know, you've got your Cruise and you've got all sorts of things, but those really aren't a sports coupe. Most of the Cruises are sedans these days. You don't have things like the Grand Am anymore from the GM mark. So really what you're looking at is something like a Forte, or you're looking at maybe a Fiesta in a two-door. And again, I mean, that might be okay, but they're really more of the, I don't know, the Forte is more of a coupe and the Fiesta is more of a hot hatch. In the Scion, this is kind of, to me, like the Mustang of this generation, because it is nice looking. It's got, I think, a ton of muscular additions to the 14 design, and that's what they're going for, this more masculine design. I think that it has good looks in that they haven't overdone it, and it does have, you know, it does have a look back to the parent company, the Toyota brand, in that you can see some of the similarities in the split grille. You definitely see the similarities in the quality and the reliability in these Scions, and in the way that, like, this 6-speed automatic transmission works, very much like driving a Toyota. Yet this has that spicier, sportier side that you used to see from Toyota in the 80s with the hot hatches, you know, the Corollas and such, and the Supra. And I think really is following the lineage of where they've started again with the FRS. So they've gone back into time, they looked at what they really wanted, and they were challenged to build a pure sports coupe. Well, that was the FRS. That's the step up from the TC, frankly. That's what you would grow into, I think, if you wanted to pay closer to the $30,000 mark for a well-equipped one. Yet you can get one easily closer to 25, which is only about 4,000 more than this one as tested. So you might also choose to go to the TC because it's sporty, looks good, and has more usability. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But my point here is that this is a very flexible car, but it's also one of the few coupes that is as flexible, as inexpensive, and still as fun to drive, I think, as Scion has made this. And not to mention the huge network of dealer add-on options that you can get for your Scion. You can customize and personalize this car straight from the dealer showroom, and that is pretty cool. So most of these cars, as you might know, come as one package, and then you start to add on the options and spoilers and wheels and tire packages, interior options, exterior graphics. You can do it all with Scion. So let's talk about a couple things with this car, like, say, the engine and the performance. So the engine is a 4-cylinder, 179 horsepower engine. Nothing strikingly different from previous generations, except that I feel like this car is peppier even than the previous generation, and that may just be a perception, because it still does 0 to 60 in about 7.5 seconds. That's going to be pretty close to your other Scion experiences. It's going to be front-wheel drive. It has a 6-speed automatic transmission, optional manual transmission, and I personally still would opt for the manual. When I drove the previous generation at launch several years ago, the thing I noticed even then is that I still like to drive a sport coupe with a manual. Now, that said, this 6-speed automatic is a nice drive. It does have some quirks, though, with it. And as we accelerate from this light here, the thing that I notice is that if I get on it and I'm going along and then I lift and then I put my foot back on the gas, it hasn't really shifted. And it's still hanging up there around 3. And I find that I want it to shift more aggressively, shift up into the next gear. So it doesn't seem to do that. It seems to be more sports mode all the time, if you will. Now, the other thing that I notice is that if you put it into sport mode, it automatically goes into 4th gear, which is interesting. Then, if you stick it up into 6th, it's not shifting, really, because I'm too low a speed. But what it'll now do is go into a sport mode and go through all 6 gears. If I shift it down and I put it into 1st, it'll hold 1st gear. If I put it in the 2nd, it'll go 1st, 2nd, and then hold 2nd. So you can see what I'm kind of saying here is that it is not a purely manual mode the way that some of the higher end cars are, where literally if you don't change the gear, it'll hit the rev limiter. This car will change gears for you continuously, and if you hit that rev limiter in the automatic, it's going to shift up. And because it is not quite at the level of some of the higher end cars, and you're not paying for it either. So all in all, it's actually a pretty functional manual mode, but it takes some getting used to because it's not, I don't think it's what you would expect if you're used to driving other cars. If you're used to driving Toyotas, though, this will perform pretty similar to the transmissions that I've tested in the Camry recently and in things like the Tundra, the Toyota Tundra. And even in the Lexus brand, you might find that these perform similarly, though I find that in cars like the F-Sport and the IS350 F-Sport, that is a very different experience. Those are very much performance-oriented vehicles. So, all in all, that's my stint on the transmission. Now, fuel economy and mileage, great in this car for a sports coupe, I think. 23 in town, 31 out on the highway. Not bad, especially considering you've got basically 180 horsepower under the hood, and you've got good 0 to 60 time for this kind of car. So you won't feel it too much at the pump. Now, that's not going to be as good as things like the Fiesta or the Focus or the things like the Cruze or the Hyundai Elantra 2-door or the Forte, where they're more tuned towards driving economy every day. But I think that 31 out on the highway is going to be real good for commuters, and they're still going to have a car like this that they really enjoy to drive, and they're proud to pull up to the office or get-togethers or the club with. And this car does have a striking outside. When you look at the outside, if you go back to our real first impressions video, you'll see the full 360 as we go around the car and talk about it. Good body lines, strong body lines, and I really like the front end on this. So that's from the outside, they really did get this car right, I think. They have done a good job. It's got a chopped roofline, which you can really see right here. More chops, even so, more so than the previous generation. So keep all that in mind. The other thing I'm going to say about this car is that, well, it is definitely a sport coupe. It rides much firmer than just a general economy car, and it's going to ride flat through the corners with that front wheel drive type of feeling. So you do have to watch the understeer with these cars, because if you go way too hot into a corner, it is front wheel drive. You're not going to get away from that, but you do have traction control, and you can recover because of the systems that are on this car. All right, some other interesting parts about this car are from the interior aspect, I think. Much different interior design than the previous generation. Love the red face gauges. Love that they're deep set into pods. They're actually very easy to read, big numbers, easy to tell where things are. They do jump 20, 40, 60, 80, so you have to watch your speed in between those, like 25, 35 is a little harder to tell because it does not have any notches at those points. You do have the odometer and tripometer in the center, all in red. It's all one color, everything's in red, with your gear change up under the fuel gauge. And everything's in red, like I said, and you also change into the trip computer by reaching through and pressing in on the little stub inside the inside the speedometer gauge face. That's going to be a little awkward for some people, and it is pretty small numbers and a pretty minimal trip computer for all of that. You know, it's got 2 trips, A and B, average miles per gallon, temperature, and then something that tells you whether the eco's on or not. And it does have an eco mode in this vehicle. So that's some things that are interesting from that perspective. Of course, you have your 6.1 navigation. And I think this is a pretty cool system, the Pioneer system, much more integrated into the dash than the previous generation TC. I like it personally much, much better. I like the soft touch on the dash. I like, the patterning into the hard plastic on the doors. And, you will have some of that hard plastic feel in this car because of the price point. You also have sport seats and this pretty cool panoramic sunroof in this car. And this car, I got in and I totally forgot that was an option. And this is pretty neat. Glass over the rear passengers and glass over the front, and it's a full tilt and slide back. Now, the one thing that you're going to want to keep in mind with this is that this is manual, both front and rear, and this is kind of like those old sunshades you used to get in, houses, or you might still have them today where they roll down. So if you hit this wrong, yeah, it does, So you're going to want to watch that. And this little tab right here is going to be the weak spot on this for longevity anyway. The other thing is that you get a little bit of curl on these because they are soft. So you don't get a lot of weatherproofing out of the cold because it is just a soft vinyl thing. And you're not going to get complete light sealing around it. So you are going to want to keep those things in mind. And it's not hard to reach back and shade the passengers or the rear seat if you don't want it open. So that's not hard either, but it is again on that spring rollback. So it's kind of a little lower level, but not too bad. This car has steering wheel controls, which you won't find on the FRS. So you have the volume and your up-down tuning ability for the presets, and then your mode button to switch through your modes. Now, everything's pretty reachable in this car, so if you don't find this all that functional other than the volume, that's what I use the most in the week that we've had this car, you're going to be able to reach this and do everything you can through the radio. And be sure to check out more about the Bespoke app. You can do a whole ton of things with that app. It's an app suite that will also power the navigation and use the data off your phone. And by loading it onto your phone, it interfaces with the car and uses your phone's data plan and really brains to drive the head unit. So it's pretty much porting everything in here. And if you want to look in here, you've got the map. If you hit the map button and you don't have the thing installed, it's going to tell you have to install the Bespoke piece. Otherwise, there's a lot you can do with this vehicle. I like what they've done with the Scions quite a bit. Of course, power windows, manual seats, sports seats, which you can see from the shoulder pieces here. And, you've got your USB and AUX, real easy right here to reach in front of the shifter, along with the traction control cancel and a power port. And then you have a nice little storage console, not real deep, but big enough to put like a small pocketbook in, or wallet, or something if you want to run your iPod back here. Although there is a little bit of a ledge to keep it from running away when you're going around curves, but I would be careful with that. This is nice because it does have the ability to put stuff in, and you can, try to fish it through. So there are things like that. And all in all, I guess what I'm getting at with the Scion is that this is a great entry-level car, priced right around $21,000 as tested, and you get so much for that. Good performance, great looks. This is the absolutely red color on the outside. Great ticket magnet. If you really ask me, this car is a car that I think the cops are going to see coming. But neat features too, safety features like the turn signal indicators on the mirrors. That's really nice to have, especially in a smaller, low-to-the-ground car so that people can see you better. So all of this, plus 18-inch wheels on the outside. We have the 18-inch wheels on this. Gives it a nice finished look. So check it out if you're in the market for a two-door coupe. As I said before, there aren't many of these two-door coupes left that are really sports inspired, the way that Mustangs were back in the day, the way that Corvairs were, the way that, there were a lot of cars back in the day that even the Camaro in its lower end in its V6 was more of a sport coupe than it was anything else. Now, that brings me to my final point about the usability in this car. We're going to demonstrate right now for you how you get in and out of the back seat, and it might surprise you. So let's take a look. All right, so we said that we were going to demonstrate this back seat and the entry and exit. So it's pretty easy, well, relatively for a coupe. So you flip this switch here, or the lever on the back corner, the shoulder of the front seat. It flips forward like you would expect, and then pushes all the way forward for you. And then with relative ease, you can squeeze yourself back here, and you can't see me anymore, but here I am in the back seat. See, here I am. And what's neat about this is that where the back seat is, or front seat is at the moment, my knees don't even touch, and my head doesn't even touch in the back. Now, if I move my hat up and down, I'm smacking it. But to get out, you just flip that forward, press forward again, and now you can either choose to go out front ways and potentially fall on your face, or you can back out like some people will tend to. I will just step out with my long legs, but backing out is sometimes more graceful depending on your height. All right, so that actually is a little easier on a two-door car like this than you really would expect. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that I keep saying two-door coupe. It looks like a two-door coupe, but it's deceiving. It's really a three-door notchback if you want to be, or three-door liftback if you want to be honest about it. You have a full piece of glass that opens all the way up. It is a hatch, so this technically is a three-door hatchback. And I think the best part of that is it gives you such flexibility to load stuff into the cargo area. You've got your folding back seats. This car will carry a ton of stuff in it, and it'll be a lot easier to do so than the previous generation Scion. All right, so that is the real video, the real review on this all-new 2014 Scion TC. We really like this car. It has a lot of personality. I like the more aggressive front end. I like that a lot, actually. I think it has really given the Scion TC an edge in the coupe market. There aren't many of these entry-level sports coupes left anymore, especially not one with as much flair and design as this TC has. It has 179 horsepower coming from a 4-cylinder engine, which is great. A 6-speed automatic transmission or manual transmission. You're going to have, well, I should say you have a manual transmission as an option. You're going to have some nice wheel and tire packages, and of course all of that vast amount of dealer options you can add and personalize your Scion. That is what the Scion brand has been built on, and credit really goes to Toyota for giving younger buyers and even older buyers. I've known a lot of people that have driven these cars that span the age range, especially with the new Scion FRS that's been out for a couple years now. These cars allow you to come in at a younger age and go out and drive them even up into your 50s and 60s and really enjoy them. It's a brand that you can live with for a lifetime. So at about $21,000, this is at the upper end of your Scion TC, and you've got the great bespoke app package along with the 6.1 screen, 6.1 inch screen inside, and really nice features. Now, it doesn't have leather and heated seats and all of that, but you're not really looking for that in a coupe like this, in a sports coupe, for a good price. So I say if you're in the market for a two-door and you really like that personal sporty coupe look that's hard to find these days, this might be the one you want to test drive. Now, I'm not saying buy it. You'll have to make that decision, But for Real Auto Reports, I'm Jonathan McGrew. We think Scion's done a nice job with this redesign, and from Real Auto Ranch, we'll have more reviews coming for you down the road.